So far, we have seen a great system, but we have seen leaks from time to time. In Victoria, it's now the third time lucky. How confident are you that some of those problems in the system have been ironed out?
Well, you're right. No system is completely perfect. But the thing that I'm absolutely confident about is that the Victorians have really thoughtfully considered every risk. And whilst nothing is 100% certain, as your reports just outlined, they have taken really significant steps to reduce that risk. I know that they have literally gone from the top to the bottom of how they've run their quarantine system. I've been and had a look to see what they're intending to do, and I'm feeling pretty confident about it.
What's changed that makes you so confident? What are the main changes?
Well, I think we've already heard some of the concerns about aerosols and particularly transmission from room to room. And certainly we saw that in that second outbreak. So what they've done in terms of taking steps, and I think you just heard about negative pressure, but also just in terms of where, for example, and when meals are delivered, so people aren't opening doors at the same time. So all those little practical things that should really help prevent, I mean, I don't think we can use the word eliminate because things still do happen, but I certainly prevent that risk.
Are we going forward with the right strategy here? Because it seems like we are going to be living with a hotel quarantine system for quite some time as the vaccine gets rolled out. Should we have some kind of federal government-run facility?
Look, I'm actually a big fan of a mix of facilities in this system. So Howard Springs in the Northern Territory, which is a more like a mining camp, if you like, that works pretty well. But the truth of the matter is we've still got tens of thousands of Australians offshore. We can't accommodate them all in facilities like that. So a mix, I think, is necessary, and that means hotels. So running those carefully and well is what we need to do.
Okay, why is a mix your preferred choice? Is it because if you had a federal system, it might be a disproportionate responsibility on some states like New South Wales, for example?
To be honest with you, the Commonwealth is good at very, very many things. It doesn't have lots of staff who are nurses. It doesn't have lots of staff who are police who can secure the boundaries of these facilities. This is not their strong suit. And so I think the states, and we all know that they run state hospitals and they have police forces and they're pretty well equipped. And in fact, the people who are running the system now in Victoria have actually had experience running correctional facilities. Again, not something that the Commonwealth does. So I actually think the states are pretty well placed to do this. Now, they've got to work in collaboration with the Commonwealth, but the people who are running the Victorian system in particular, they come out of a really deep experience of running these kinds of systems.
Oh, I think you've just maybe lost your earpiece. But,
I've got one, so I'm hoping you can still hear me, can you?
Yes, no, it was good spotting from me, I've got to say. But Jane Halton, thank you. Let's look at, now, you say that Commonwealth isn't, well, I don't wish to verbal you, but service delivery is not something they do on the regular. When it comes to health, they manage budgets rather than people. So I think a lot of us are now looking at the vaccine rollout in Australia and saying, why have we done under 1 million people when hundreds of other countries, or at least 100 other countries, have seemed to have been able to roll out the vaccine far faster than we have? Do you have any explanation as to why?
Well, the short explanation at the moment is the supply of vaccine, and I think we all need to understand that. If you think about it, we're all waiting for CSL to ramp up to 1 million doses a week. We've all heard the stories about the difficulty of getting vaccines exported from many of these countries. One of my other hats is to chair the global mechanism to deliver vaccines to low to middle income countries, and we are struggling even to get those vaccines that we have bought out of countries like India, and we certainly can't get any out of Europe. So I think we need to understand that everybody in the world at the moment wants vaccines, and there aren't enough of them. We're really lucky that we can make them onshore. And yes, I'd like to see them rolled out more quickly. Everybody would. But in truth, we can roll them out as fast as we can make them. And that's what we're doing.
700,000 vaccines seem to have been secretly delivered from the UK. It looks like we're scrambling to get what we can. Is that true, that they were kind of delivered without a song and dance so that Europe didn't kick up a stink?
Yes, well, I mean, I think we all know that the UK is no longer part of Europe in terms of that common
Mm,
market. So the UK can choose to do what it wishes. The UK, I think, has been really helpful in allowing those vaccines to be exported so we can get started on our really vulnerable populations. That's really important.
yeah.
But I also think we need to recognise that there's really massive waves and a lot of people dying across Europe.
Mm,
And indeed, in England, it's only just come off the really awful peaks that we've seen.
yeah.
The US isn't exporting much vaccine. They've just sent some to Canada and to Mexico, precisely because they've got big waves as well.
Mm.
So everybody wants this vaccine, and that's where being one of the 20 countries in the world that can make it puts us in a pretty good position, I think.
Well, the Prime Minister has said in recent days that perhaps an explanation as to why we've only done about 1 million shots so far is because of those early supply issues from the EU. They just didn't deliver on 3 million vaccines. But we knew of these problems back in January. We knew the EU was putting in export controls then. What did we do in January to potentially mitigate those supply chain issues that was obvious to everyone that they were coming?
Yeah, well, what we did was double down on working with the CSL to make sure that they could actually make this vaccine.
But did they
You probably,
expedite anything?
well, I think, yes, they have done. I mean, it's important to remember that making vaccines is really complicated.
Mm.
And certainly in the case of the AstraZeneca CSL vaccine that we're going to have tens of millions of doses of, it's a biological process. It's not chemistry. And therefore, we have to understand that it takes time to do, and it takes technology transfer. And that's basically exactly what we're expecting to happen here, and that's what we're going to see the benefit of.
Well, AstraZeneca, this report overnight, the TGA is looking at it now. There's a strong association with blood clots. Does this change anything for us, do you think?
Again, let's get this in perspective. The risk of these blood clots, and it's a known risk now, is very, very, very small. And the risk of dying of COVID-19, and this is particularly the case, more risk as you get older, or if you've got a comorbidity. So the risk of dying of COVID-19 is not insubstantial. And what you always do with medicines is you weigh up the risk and the reward.
Yep.
And what's very clear with this vaccine is the reward, the disease and death that it prevents far outweighs that risk. And I think as someone's observed overnight, the risk of clotting from this actually is more than outshadowed by the risk that you would get, for example, from the contraceptive pill.
Yep.
So we actually need to put all of these things in perspective and understand that no medicine's without risk, but we need to understand the risk. And the good thing is, because we can describe the symptoms of these clots, we can also help manage that in the very, very rare event that they occur.
Well, in the UK, for example, the government is going to give an alternative vaccine to those under 30. In Italy, they're going to give it to those aged over 60. We have put all our eggs, most of our eggs, in the AstraZeneca basket. Do we not have that option because we didn't hedge our bets enough?
No, we hedged our bets. And in fact, it's important to remember that Pfizer, we're already delivering the Pfizer vaccine, and people might remember that's the one that requires really, really cold conditions, -70, to move it around and deliver it. So we've got Pfizer vaccine in the country. I think we've been getting 170,000 a week or thereabouts, and it's rising up to about 300,000 a week. I think we ordered 10 million doses, which is enough for 5 million people. We've also got orders with another vaccine that we're expecting will be successfully registered, fingers crossed. That's called Novavax.
Yes.
And so that will hopefully become available mid-year. So we have hedged our bets. We put orders, I think, with 5 in total. One of those people would remember that the University of Queensland vaccine sadly hasn't proceeded for reasons that were perfectly reasonable. So, yes, we've hedged our bets. And, yes, I'd like everyone to be able to get a vaccine right this minute. But what, again, I'd ask people to think about is if you live in many, many other countries in the world, you get almost no vaccine. Look at our friends and our family members in places like Papua New Guinea, where they have literally just got a couple of 100,000 doses, if that, and there's millions of people in that country who are really suffering from this disease. So, yes, it's really frustrating. I understand that. It will take us some weeks to do 1B. That's that group 70 plus comorbidities. but we will get there. And CSL are now ramping up that production. And yes, we know about some risks. They're very tiny, very, very tiny. So I'm feeling pretty confident about our rollout.
Do you think we might get some secret vaccines from Britain again?
That's a good question, isn't it? Look, I think actually one of the things we can expect in both Britain and the US, because they have ramped up production so significantly and they are rolling out delivery so quickly, they will go from a situation of under to oversupply. And I know that seems bizarre to even think about at this point, but those industrial machines, those factories are really pumping out this vaccine. And I think, yes, Australia could hope to get a share of that, but also let's also think about people in the low to middle income countries who also desperately need a share. So we need to think about how we share that equitably.